My name's Ben, short for Benjamin Thomas Harris. Shannon and I tied the knot 7 years ago, but lately, things just haven't felt right between us. No matter how hard I try, I can't shake this gnawing sense of dissatisfaction that's been hanging over me. It started about 6 weeks ago, even before the photos showed up. The tension between us has been building, especially over the last few days. And to be honest, I have this gut feeling her sister, Nita, has something to do with it. Right after I got the photo, I was working out of town on a pretty challenging job. There was a major issue with the main refrigeration unit at Purdue University, and despite everything we tried, the team just couldn't fix it. I work for Fraser HVAC, a respected company in the field, and I'm one of 2 senior engineers who handle high-priority emergency calls. It just so happened I was the one on call that week. So Tuesday, I made the 4-hour drive out to West Lafayette and stayed until Thursday night. We finally got the system back up and running around 9 p.m., and by then, I was completely drained. I grabbed dinner at a place near campus, then headed back to my hotel around 10. I sent Shannon a quick text saying I was turning in for the night, and that we'd be running final tests on the system in the morning. I also reminded her we had dinner plans Friday night when I got back. After a long shower, I threw on some comfortable clothes, turned on ESPN for background noise, and climbed into bed. That's when I got the message. It was from Roland Bruton, my closest buddy at Fraser. The message came with an apology and a photo. It was taken that same evening at a place called Cassadell. Roland told me to call him if I wanted to talk more about it. The photos showed a couple sitting close at a cozy restaurant table, holding hands, their heads leaned in like no one else existed. It was Shannon, my wife. And the man with her? Eric Chesterton, a guy from the OSU library staff. I never liked Eric. Always thought he was kind of off. But it never crossed my mind that he might be involved with Shannon. Sure, things between us had been off lately, but the idea of her being with someone else? That was something I never imagined. I knew sitting there doing nothing would only make me angrier, so I turned off the TV and called Roland. Sorry to bug you this late, I started. But I think it's time we talk. Roland took a second before answering. Emily and I were grabbing dinner, and as we were finishing up, she nudged me and asked, "Isn't that Shannon?" He said he didn't want to believe it at first. But they watched from across the restaurant, and yeah, it was her. And Eric. They weren't kissing or anything, but it was the way they were talking, so focused on each other. Just like in the picture. Roland sighed. I'm sorry, man. I wish we'd stayed to see more, but it looked like they'd just gotten their drinks. We didn't think they'd be leaving anytime soon. There was a long silence on the line. Neither of us knew what to say. Eventually, Roland spoke up again. Look, Ben, I get it now. Emily's pretty upset about it, and honestly, I think I'm gonna be pissed off myself once this really sinks in. I asked him when we'd be wrapping things up at Purdue so I could get home. He told me they planned to run the final tests in the morning, and then I'd be making the 4-hour drive back. Gives you time to cool off and not do anything dumb, he added with a chuckle. He knew I wasn't the kind of guy to get violent. He just said it to break the tension. Before we hung up, Roland mentioned something else. Emily and I were talking about this earlier. It's probably too soon, but if you need a place to crash, our guest room's yours. I thanked him. Really appreciate that, man. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but I'll keep that in mind. After we hung up, I turned off the lights and laid back, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were spinning, but sleep came quickly, probably from sheer exhaustion. No marriage is perfect, right? Even the good ones have cracks. But still, I never thought I'd be here. I really did love Shannon. I gave everything I had to make her happy, 7 years of marriage, and 3 more before that while we were dating. Out of the 4 couples we were close to who ended up married, we were the only ones still together. And truth be told, I thought we had dodged the most common relationship killers, money problems and a lack of intimacy. We were both careful with our spending, and as for intimacy, that part of our relationship stayed strong. Sure, things had gotten a little routine, like they do in any long-term relationship, but the desire was still there. We still wanted each other just as much as we did in the early days. So no, our problems didn't come from our bank account or the bedroom. They came from Nita. Nita was 35, about 4 years older than both Shannon and me. Her husband, Alex, wasn't much better, a pompous lawyer who thought he was smarter than everyone in the room. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with him often. But Nita? She was a constant presence in our home, always doling out unsolicited advice on how we should live our lives. She'd make offhand comments like, "Wouldn't it make more sense to keep the dishes over here and move the spices there?" Or she'd criticize me for using a gas grill instead of charcoal because charcoal gives meat that real flavor. She even went after my old green recliner, called it trailer park chic. That pretty much summed up her attitude toward everything in our home. What really got to me was that Shannon never once asked her to back off or leave. She just let it happen. And it wasn't just the little digs or unsolicited advice. What cut the deepest was hearing how Nita talked about me behind my back. If I was in the room, she'd put on this fake sweetness, always complimenting me, how nice I was to Shannon, how helpful I was around the house. Meanwhile, she'd paint Alex as this helpless guy who couldn't even screw in a light bulb. But if she thought I wasn't around, that's when the claws came out. One time, I came in through the back door after a jog and caught her mid-conversation with Shannon in the kitchen. She didn't hear me. I stood quietly for a second and listened. "I love you, Sean," she said. "But honestly, Ben's just underwhelming. He doesn't have the charm of Christopher or even Tom. And yeah, he's educated, but why does he work with his hands? You could have done way better." We'd been married almost 2 years at that point. She went on about Shannon's exes, like she missed those guys more than she appreciated the man her sister actually married. Then she asked, "Are you seriously thinking about having kids with him?" Her tone said it all, like the idea made her stomach turn. Not 5 minutes later, she walked into the living room all smiles, telling me how she and Shannon had just been talking about what a wonderful husband I was. I couldn't believe the nerve. Shannon and I argued about it, more than once. Every time, she tried to calm me down, saying, "Nita doesn't mean it that way." Or, "She actually likes you, she's just blunt." But I'd had enough. I told her how much it crushed me when Nita said we'd, definitely, not be having kids. That comment hit hard. I was pacing in the bedroom, too angry to sit still. The disappointment ate at me, and for a moment, I genuinely thought I might lose it. Shannon tried to explain it away, said Nita was just venting, that she loved me and didn't mean to cause drama. But that fight? That was one of the worst we ever had. I lost it, and said some things I shouldn't have. Then I stormed out of the house. I ended up at Bob's restaurant, where my buddy Raphael works behind the bar. I didn't even drink that night. I just sat there for 6 straight hours, letting the silence calm me down. When I got home around midnight, Shannon was already in bed, curled up, facing away from me. We barely spoke the next morning. Just a quiet, "good morning," and a request for coffee. Over the next few days, things began to thaw. We got back to a kind of normal. But we never really dealt with it. Not all the way. And that's what stung. I knew Shannon loved me, I really did. But I couldn't wrap my head around why she wouldn't stand up for me, why she let her sister run me down like that. After that, the only way I could cope was by dodging Nita entirely. I made excuses to avoid being home when she visited. And I tried not to bring her up in conversation with Shannon at all. But the weeks before my trip to West Lafayette were some of the roughest. And strangely, Nita was around more than ever. It was like she lived at our place, showing up nearly every day. I'd come home from work and find Shannon and Nita deep in conversation in the kitchen, serious ones too, from the look of it. Maybe that's when things started shifting. Shannon began pulling away from me, acting colder, more distant. Eventually, she stopped even mentioning Nita when I was around. I had no clue what was going on between them, but whatever it was driving a wedge between us. Our conversation stayed polite, but who the hell wants polite from their own wife. There was a caution in her behavior, a hesitancy I couldn't quite name, but I felt it. And our intimacy? Practically non-existent by then. A few half-hearted hugs were all we'd shared in weeks. The weird energy between us made it hard for me to reach out to her, and honestly, I was close to just giving up. Even our sex life had become dull, predictable, infrequent, going through the motions. In the last month, we'd barely been together at all. I'm not great with deep, emotional talks, but I tried, twice, maybe 3 times. I asked Shannon directly if something was bothering her, if we needed to talk things through. I told her I wanted to fix whatever was going wrong. She brushed it off, said she was just stressed about some changes at work and that Nita had been a little overbearing lately, but nothing serious. She followed it up with a forced smile and a quick peck on the cheek. Thanks for caring, babe. That was it. This strange distance dragged on for a while, until I finally decided I needed a second opinion. Someone who wouldn't sugarcoat things. I called Aunt Gwen, my mom's younger sister. After my dad passed and my mom got sick, Gwen had been like a second mother to me. She lives out in Seattle now, but we still talk on the phone pretty regularly. If anyone could help me understand what the hell was going on with Shannon, it was Gwen. I told myself I'd give her a call once I got back from Purdue. After Roland sent me that photo, I made a conscious decision to push aside the storm in my head and focus on work. On Friday morning, I just wanted to get through the final round of testing, make sure everything held under load, and get out of there. We wrapped things up around 1 p.m. The Purdue crew offered to take me to lunch as a thank you, and afterward I hit the road. During the long, 200-mile drive back, my head was a mess of questions. Had Shannon and Eric already crossed the line, or was something still building? Had I done something to push her away? Were her feelings for him real, or just temporary? Was this forgivable, or was our marriage beyond saving? And where did Nita fit into all of this? Was she egging her sister on? By the time I was nearing Columbus, crawling through Friday traffic, I still had no answers. But one thing was clear. I wasn't ready to go home and face her. Not yet. Roland had offered me his guest room, but instead, I'd booked a room at a Motel 6. That night, I had a steak and a cold beer at Outback and sat in silence. I wasn't sad, not exactly. Just drained. Like whatever fire had been inside me had burned out. I sent Shannon a text, just the basics. Almost done. I'll be home tomorrow. No sweet talk. No emojis. No. Miss you. Just facts. She replied. Okay, honey. I miss you. Yeah. Sure. Around 9:30 that night, I drove down our street, real slow, just to get a feel for things. I scanned for any unfamiliar cars parked nearby, nothing out of the ordinary. The house was dark except for our bedroom, where the glow behind the curtains told me the TV was on. I didn't go in. Just circled back to the motel and went to bed. The next morning, just before noon, I came home. There was no rush. No real feeling at all. The anger I'd felt earlier in the week had faded, replaced by a numb kind of emptiness. I wasn't looking for revenge. I just wanted answers. I needed to understand what had happened, what it meant, and whether there was anything left to fight for. The house was still. Too still. And that silence only made the weight in my chest heavier. I came in through the side door, went upstairs to freshen up, threw some things into drawers just to feel normal again. Then I headed down to the kitchen to make a sandwich. That's when I saw it. A suitcase. Sitting by the front door. A big one, full. Just sitting there. I stood there staring at it, paralyzed. No clue how long I'd been frozen in place, trying to make sense of what it meant. Then the side door creaked open. Shannon stepped in. Hey, baby, she said softly, flashing this odd, uncertain smile. She came over and hugged me, not the way a wife hugs her husband after a week apart. It felt more like a pat from your grandma. Familiar, but hollow. I couldn't stop looking at her. I didn't want to yell. I wasn't here to make a scene. I just needed to understand. She took my hand and led me to the kitchen. We sat across from each other at the table, just like we had hundreds of times before. You must be exhausted, she said gently. Did you eat yet? Want me to cook something? I told her I was fine, even though my chest was still tight. I kept my eyes on her face, watching every flicker of emotion as she leaned in a little closer. I really need to talk to you, she said, her voice serious. It's important. She looked genuinely sorry, like she was bracing herself for something difficult, and waited for me to respond. But I didn't say anything. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch between us. Then she asked softly, Can I ask you something? Just please don't get angry, okay? Let me say everything first before you react. I know I'm asking a lot, but I need to explain everything. I gave a slow nod. Go ahead, I said. Just say what you need to say. At that point, I just wanted some kind of resolution. I didn't know what was coming, but I was done sitting in the dark. She took a deep breath and started talking. She brought up Nita. Immediately, I felt my blood pressure spike. The anger came out fast and hot. What the hell does she have to do with this? I snapped, my voice louder than I meant. That rude, condescending woman, what now? Shannon's face went pale with panic. Please, Ben, she said, practically begging. Just listen. I noticed my fists were clenched tight, and I was holding my breath without realizing it. I stood up, paced a few circles around the kitchen, then sat back down and took a long breath. All right, I said. I'll listen. I promise. But in my head, I was already bracing for whatever mess was coming. The fact that she was leading with her sister told me this wasn't going to be short or easy. She glanced at me cautiously, then continued. She explained that she'd been spending a lot of time with Nita lately, and it was taking a toll. She asked me to try and understand how it was affecting her. Apparently, things between Nita and Alex had gone downhill fast. About a month ago, Nita had walked in on Alex with one of his assistants, on his office desk. Shannon had seen it all unfold firsthand. She said Nita was shattered, furious, heartbroken, and lost. Alex had apologized over and over, said he wanted to fix things, even offered to go to counseling. But on Tuesday, everything changed. Nita hit a breaking point. She told Alex to leave, said she wanted a divorce. He didn't take it well. In fact, he turned violent. Shannon's voice cracked a little when she said it. Nita ended up in the hospital that night with a concussion. For a second, all my own anger took a back seat. Jesus, I said quietly. I'm sorry. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Shannon reached for my hand. Thank you, she said, her eyes soft. I know you can't stand her, and it means a lot that you still said that. She paused. But now comes the hardest part. She explained that Nita was being discharged Monday, but she had nowhere to go. Alex was being a jerk, refused to leave their house. So Nita had nowhere safe to stay. Shannon wanted to offer her our guest room. She'd probably need to take some time off work, maybe switch to part-time. Shannon wanted to be there for her, take care of her. She rushed through the explanation, knowing how I felt. I know she's not your favorite person, she said. And I know it's a lot to ask, but she has no one else, Ben. I'm all she has. I looked at her for a second, then sighed. You're right. I don't like her. I don't even enjoy being in the same room as her. But that doesn't matter right now. Of course she can stay here. Her whole face lit up. You really mean that? She said, voice trembling. She got up, came around the table, and plopped down in my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. Her eyes were full of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, kissing me gently. I promise I'll keep her from getting in your way. I'll protect you from her snark. I swear she won't treat you like that again. And in that moment, I believed her. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. I pulled her in close and rested my head against her shoulder. My chest tightened, not from pain this time, but from something almost like peace. I could feel tears threatening to spill, but I kept them in check. After a moment, I helped her off my lap and sat her in a nearby chair. Then I went over to the sink and poured myself a glass of water. But I couldn't wait any longer. Shannon, I said, turning to face her. Can we just finish this? Whatever it is you're not telling me, let's just get it out there. She looked at me, confused. What do you mean? She asked. I stared at her for a beat too long. Then I said it. Come on. You can't even be honest with me. Her face fell. Ben, I really don't understand. What do you think I'm hiding? I picked up my phone, scrolled through the messages, and found the photo Roland had sent me. Without saying a word, I turned the screen toward Shannon and said flatly, This. You and this man. Her eyes locked onto the image, and for a moment she didn't say a thing. She looked stunned. I glanced toward the suitcase still sitting by the front door, confused all over again. If she was supposedly helping Nita move in, why was she packed and ready to leave? Before I could even form the question, she spoke. Oh, Ben, she whispered. This is just heartbreaking. She told me that Eric, yes, the man in the photo, was married, and that his wife, Carrie, had recently suffered a recurrence of breast cancer. Their twin toddlers were caught in the middle of it all, and Eric was scared out of his mind. He needed someone to talk to, she said softly. That dinner, it was just that. A dinner. A way for him to cope. His wife's prognosis is still uncertain, and he's terrified. She looked at me, her voice thick with hurt. Did you really think it was something romantic? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The way I'd shown her the picture spoke volumes. It looks that way, I know, she said, her voice shaking. But that's not what it was. Roland and Emily thought the same thing, right? They jumped to conclusions too. Before I could speak, she wrapped her arms around me tightly. Benjamin Thomas Harris, she said firmly, you are the only man I've loved. The only man I've even considered since the day we met. Eric's a friend. That's all. I was just there for someone whose world is falling apart. Her arms gripped tighter. I could barely breathe, partly from the hug, but more from the emotional weight pressing down on me. I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't want to hear anything about Nita, she added, her voice trembling. You shut down the second her name came up. And I was drowning trying to support her. It pulled me away from you, and I hate that. I'm sorry I became so distant. I was trying to hold everything together. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. I get it. But the suitcase. She looked toward the door, then gently pulled me down to meet her lips in a long, meaningful kiss. When she looked into my eyes, I saw the truth in hers. I went to Nita and Alex's place to get her clothes, she explained. I packed that for her, not me. She's going to be staying with us, and I didn't want her to have to go back there. Baby, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding, she said quietly. I should have been more upfront. I had no idea you were suffering like that. I'm sorry too, I replied. I should have asked, not assumed. She didn't let go of my hand as she led me upstairs, quickly, urgently. Whatever had been broken between us, we were both ready to mend it. In the quiet of our bedroom, we undressed slowly, held each other, kissed, cried. We made love with the kind of tenderness that comes only after nearly losing something you care deeply about. In between kisses and touches, I asked her softly, Really? She looked at me with that familiar sparkle. Yes. Really? I saw his wife with my own eyes. And Ben, did you really think I'd ever cheat on you? I thought it was over, I admitted. She shook her head. One cheater in the family is more than enough. Per Nita. In the days that followed, I finally saw Nita again. And to my surprise, she was different. Visibly changed. After what she'd gone through, it made sense. She looked humbled, quieter. She was sincerely grateful for having a safe place to stay, and she couldn't stop praising Shannon. Over and over, she apologized to me. I completely misjudged you, she said one night, tears in her eyes. Eventually, I told her she didn't need to keep apologizing. It was alright. And it was. She even started pitching in, helping with meals, tidying up. Once she found a good lawyer, she finally began to regain some footing. She secured a decent settlement and moved into a nice apartment of her own. As the dust settled, Shannon and I started spending time together like we used to. The house felt peaceful again. There was this new calm between us, like we'd come through something that had quietly been eroding our marriage, and made it to the other side. It almost felt like a second honeymoon. Watching Nita's marriage fall apart had been painful, but it reminded us how easy it is to take love for granted. We'd seen what could happen when communication fails, when distance creeps in. We promised we wouldn't let that happen again. And we kept that promise. There were more smiles in our home. More laughter. More us. Then, for months later, we got the news: Eric's wife, Carrie, had pulled through. She was in remission. Despite everything, despite Eric still being kind of, well, Eric, I was genuinely happy for them. Sometimes things fall apart. But sometimes they come back stronger. And sometimes, love just needs a second chance.